Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to UP Marbella. This time we are outside on our covered deck. Really cool terrace to train on this one. We are coming back to the questions, your questions answered. Now, a few of you have added some more questions, some with regard to training, some with regard to diets. What we're going to do in this very short video is briefly run you through those answers. And if you have any more questions, of course, use the link that I will place in the email. You will have seen an email that I've sent this to you in. Use that link, ask more questions, and each week we will be filming another video exactly like this for you. So, without further ado, we will get straight on. First question, fight the flab. How do I fight the flab around my middle? Is it sugar? Do I cut all sugar? I stopped drinking for 5 months, which is impressive if you knew my capabilities, but I didn't seem to make any difference to my middle. Yes, I could see the benefits in other ways, but I want to concentrate on losing the flab. Any suggestions? Absolutely. So, fat loss really is very simple. If you are burning more calories, on the face of it, if you are burning more calories than you are taking in theory, you should lose fat. Now, the importance of a transformation and what we do at Ultimate Performance is ensuring that we burn as much fat as possible whilst building as much muscle as possible. Now, that doesn't simply mean creating a calorie deficit. It means creating a calorie deficit and optimizing your performance, your health, your hormonal levels, and the amount of muscle mass you carry, because when you carry more muscle mass, you burn fat faster. Now, what does that mean? It's not as simple as cutting out alcohol, for instance. Yes, cutting out alcohol is probably going to improve your liver, and it's going to improve your gut. If you improve your liver and your gut, this is going to benefit fat loss massively, because if your liver is not able to detoxify your tissues, etc., get all of the waste product out of your body isn't going to lose fat. Why? Because it needs to use that as a storage mechanism for the things that could harm you elsewhere. So, how do we cut fat? We need to ensure we are in some level of a calorie deficit. Now, that could be a large calorie deficit or a small calorie deficit. The easier option and more sensible option is always to be in a smaller calorie deficit. If we're in a smaller calorie deficit of, say, 250 calories, we are going to lose fat. And the chances are we're going to be able to keep it more consistent, because we're not going to get starving hungry and then start binging. You know the kind of cycles where you're really hungry at the weekend because you're bored and you eat loads and loads of food because you created too big a calorie deficit, trying to rush fat off you very quickly. Instead, the better option is always going to be to create a small deficit that we can stick to over time, and then we have to do exactly that. We need to give it time. You need to do the right thing repeatedly, habitually. Take in a good amount of protein. For females, this is going to be somewhere within the region of about 100 grams by protein content per day. For males, dependent on your size, anywhere between 150 and 200 grams by content per day is about optimal. What that's going to do is that's going to ensure that you are building, or at the very least maintaining, muscle tissue. If you can do that, the body is going to remain metabolically active and you are going to be burning calories. If you're losing muscle, you're actually slowing your metabolism down, which is not what we want from a fat loss point of view. Okay, we need an appropriate amount of carbohydrates in there for a number of reasons. Number one, to fuel our training. Number two, to keep us mentally satisfied. Number three, to keep our stress hormones low and keep everything settled down. Number four, to help us sleep and recover. If we're doing all of those things, it's going to allow us to maintain a stable appetite. We need an adequate amount of fats in our diet, so things like avocado, nuts, etc. Fats are very beneficial for nourishing the gut, for keeping energy levels stable and keeping blood sugar very stable, and also making sure we have enough cholesterol and enough substrates to create our hormones, to keep testosterone where it needs to be, to ensure that females on your cycle, you are very healthy and you can do everything you need to do without getting too bad of symptoms and then causing cravings and dietary relapses. Okay, so it's not as simple as just cutting out alcohol. That's not going to cut it. What you need to do is you need to eat a lot of nutrient dense foods, enough protein, that's your goal number one. Enough carbohydrates, which should be put around your training schedule. So on your training days, you need to be having carbs probably in the next 2 meals after your training. You need to make sure you're taking in enough fruits and vegetables to get a full scope of vitamins and minerals to optimize your health and performance. We need to take in enough water. Basically, we need to do a bunch of things well, consistently. That's how we lose fat. And it's not that complicated. It seems like a big task, but it really isn't. Simple rule, eat from the land. If it walks, grows, or swims, eat it. If it doesn't, don't. Really simple. Define something when you are shopping. Am I buying a food or am I buying a product? If you are buying a food, great, put it in your basket. If it's a product, i.e. something that has been manufactured before it has got to you, leave it alone. That is more than likely how you're going to start to really see results. For most part, 3 to 5 meals per day, eating from the land. Keep your carbohydrates to the meals around your training session. That way is the simplest way to lose fat. I'm going to say that again just in case you want to pause and write it down. If it walks, grows, or swims, eat it. 3 to 5 meals per day based around a protein, and have your carbohydrates around your workout. Those are really, really simple rules that will get you lean, and as long as you're creating just a small calorie deficit long term, you're going to get there eventually. Of course, you can create a larger calorie deficit initially, but that's going to risk more dietary relapse, because obviously that's where things like cravings come in. Next question. I've not done any sessions for a while as I have a week back, as you may or may not know. I power walk 6 miles every day, which I love, totally cool, not a problem with burning the extra calories. But I wanted to undertake some of your sessions, and I wondered if you'd be able to tell me some good things to do which won't bother my back. It's the lower lumbar, as I had a coccyx injury when I was younger. I also struggle with lunges and squats. Anyway, I'm guessing I could just do the stretches, but I'm worried that the plank might be antagonizing my back. Anyway, any gentle exercises you suggest would be greatly appreciated. Absolutely. So, in the live workouts, we have a number of exercises, especially in the early days, that have been planned as static stability movements in order to improve your posture and improve stability. But if you've noticed, we're not extending and flexing the back on a lot of stuff. For instance, on our I raise and T raise, we have straight back. When we're doing reverse C on the floor, we're marginally moving, but towards the posterior. We're not flexing really, really far forward and curving the spine. On our planks, on our side planks, we are working anterior and lateral portions of the abdominal wall. By doing so, we're creating stability around the back. So all of the movements that we are currently doing in your training program are there to improve back injuries. I need to, obviously, from my experience and knowing your professions, etc., I need to expect and assume certain elements of your health or fitness may not be there, i.e. knee issues, hip issues, back issues, very, very common for people who commute or work in offices. So the program has been set up to take that into account. So have the faith in doing those movements. Now, of course, with regards to things like your lunges, etc., because there's somewhat of a twisting force when you step back or you step forward, we replace that for now until you've built up strength with bilateral movements, so movements using 2 legs. So instead of doing a lunge like everybody else, you can do a normal squat, or you can do a squat to box, or you can do a step up like we've shown you in a few of the other videos. These are all alternatives that you should be doing. Every single movement in these sessions at the moment are very, very basic movements that are designed to fix you as well as work you out. So don't stress about them. And if there is something that you really, really feel specifically in the class, then don't worry about coming to me and saying, just a quick one, Elliot, is there any chance I could have a replacement for this because I feel it in my coccyx, in my back, I just want to try and do something slightly different. And we can always change things live for you. That isn't a problem. I would much rather you reached out on the class and asked me that than didn't do a bunch of classes because you were a little bit worried about asking the question live. It's totally cool, not a problem, okay? So the exercises in there are good for your back if done correctly. All you have to do is listen to my cues and focus on getting things right, and it will fix you. Next up, I've been running and cycling, generally lower intensity but longer distances between sessions. I noted your concerns about running during your last video, but I've been enjoying having the time to really stretch my long distance running. However, my background was in rugby, so most of my training was previously high intensity. I'd be grateful for any diet supplement tips focused at endurance and body weight work and how it differs to high intensity heavy weights work. So let's hit that before I answer the rest of the question. One of the things that endurance style work, long distance running, etc., promotes is efficiency. If we are running long distances, we want to try and be as efficient as possible. Now, to be efficient, we need to be as light as possible. We don't want to be carrying around excessive weight. The way to think about it is if you are running a marathon, you don't want to be carrying 50 extra kilos with you while you're running that marathon. What you do want to do is shed as much weight as possible in order to get around there efficiently. This means that your body is going to try to shed fat, which is great, really positive, but it's also going to try to shed muscle. It's going to try and get rid of muscle because it doesn't want to carry anything it doesn't need through these endurance sports. It wants to be efficient. The problem with that is that when we start to lose muscle, our metabolism starts to slow down, it's harder to stay leaner. We're less strong, we can't perform in certain ways. So the optimal position is to try and build muscle and to burn the fat or get the endurance style training built up as best we can. Okay? How do we do that? Very, very difficult, honestly, with body weight style training. But for instance, if we have a gym, the way to do it with endurance style training, and I train a lot of triathletes, a lot of professional triathletes, is what I will do in the gym is we keep their reps and their volume very, very low. We strength train them. We try to get them as strong as possible with low reps, 5, 6 reps maximum per set. Heavy, heavy lifting. Now, what this heavy lifting does is it creates a demand for the muscle to remain. So let's say we're training 3 days a week. We do squats, deadlifts, bench press, pull-ups, things like that. Big, focused, compound movements. We do them as heavy as we can for 5 or 6 reps, 4 or 5 sets. This means the muscle says, well, hang on a minute, I'm being loaded up here, I need to remain. So then when you're doing your endurance stuff, it says, well, hang on a minute, I need to lose some weight in order to be efficient, but I'll just lose fat because the muscle's needed when I do that. Okay, so we try to manipulate and trick the body into maintaining optimal strength and performance and optimal endurance, because they're kind of contrasting. Essentially what you're trying to do there is sit on 2 horses at once. Really, really difficult. The problem is that when we're doing the body weight style stuff, it again is relatively endurance or power based. An endurance power-based style training, if we do it, say, more than 3 times a week, is likely to start elevating your stress hormones, and it's likely to start causing inflammation, systemic inflammation. It can affect your hormone system, which we don't want. This is why we keep it to, say, 3 or 4 days a week as a maximum, and regularly we change the type of training to slow it down a little bit and give you a bit of a rest. This is trying to keep your hormonal system in a very, very good and safe place, and make sure that we have longevity with this style of training, which is quite difficult to create. Because we can't put a lot of load on it, they are very, very similar types of training. Very high impact, very, very kind of cortisol driven almost. Your stress hormone is going to start to go high, and that has negative knock-on effects elsewhere. So in answer to your question, it's a really, really difficult one, because we are struggling to create enough heavy weight to maintain muscle tissue, but you're doing a lot of endurance training anyway. And at a moderate intensity, what your body's going to try to do is break down muscle. All we can really do to try and offset is master our nutrition. So we need to make sure we're eating a high protein diet, as per my previous answer to one of these questions. So I would look, if you're doing that kind of endurance style training, you need to be looking at 5 meals a day as a minimum. Protein in every single meal. Now, specifically during your running or during your cycling, what I would advise is the Amplify supplement that you've seen me mention a lot. It's electrolytes, leucine, glycine and glutamine. This is designed to prevent muscle tissue breakdown. So if you take a double serving of that, so 2 scoops of that in your water whilst you are running, and I would recommend at least 50 grams of powdered carbohydrates. Something like dextrin will do. Place about 50 grams of liquid carbohydrates or powdered carbohydrates inside the Amplify and drink that as you go. What that's going to do is it's going to keep your stress hormones low whilst you are running. It's going to keep your muscles fueled. It's going to prevent muscle tissue breakdown, and it will help you recover. What we're doing there is trying to limit the damage. It's going to be very hard to prevent based on the similarities of the type of training, and that we don't have the option to put very, very heavy loads on the muscle tissue in order to sustain muscle mass. So the best thing to do is we take Amplify during the endurance sports, and about 50 grams of powdered carbohydrates in there. If we do that, that's going to be our best bet. Now, of course, we want to try and control stress hormones as well. So alongside a good diet, you can take things like ashwagandha, which is an adaptogenic herb, which can help to keep testosterone high and help to negate some of the effects of cortisol in the body. That would also be very, very useful. You're also likely to start becoming very, very inflamed indeed, just because, again, long distance running does that. So I would recommend curcumin, a curcumin supplement with every single meal, just 1 capsule with every single meal. I would recommend omega-3s to reduce the inflammatory response. Again, if you are inflamed, it's going to be very, very difficult to get in shape, and you're also going to be feeling a little bit rough as well. And finally, making sure you're taking magnesium before bed. So these are all things I've mentioned to you before, but they're going to be very, very useful. So supplement wise, Amplify and carbs during your endurance sports, magnesium before bed to help you recover, curcumin and omega-3 fish oils in order to bring down inflammation. Those would be the supplements that I suggest you take alongside a really, really good high protein diet in order to make sure you are not breaking down muscle tissue and you can perform optimally both in the sessions and during your endurance sports. There is a little bit more to this, but that's what I'd advise for now. Last half of that question. I assume there is less need, if any, to supplement my dietary protein and that hydration, i.e. electrolyte drinks, are still key, but beyond any advice would be great. For example, at times in the past, I used to sample creatine. It's not actually letting me see the rest of this. I think you may have hit a character limit. Other supplements, based on what I've said, if this is the end of the question, are probably not necessary. The thing is with supplements is they need to be supplementary to a great diet. We can't rely on them. We can't put an over-reliance on supplements. So we need to use what we should use and nothing more. Otherwise, they gather dust in your cupboard and you spend a lot of money buying them and then ended up throwing them away when they go out of date. So the basics that I've mentioned should suffice. Finally, very, very simple question. Please, could you give us some nutrition advice? Absolutely. We will, over time, be giving you more nutrition advice and more in-depth stuff. But I have touched upon this a few times in this in this Q&A. Very, very, very simple. If it eats, walks, swims, grows, flies, eat it. If it is a food rather than a product, eat it. Place your carbohydrates close to your training sessions, ideally weight training sessions, but if we're doing these Zoom sessions, close to your Zoom sessions, so before and after, or in the 2 meals afterwards. Carbohydrates close to training. Enough fats to feel good, to feel like your energy is stable and for you to think correctly. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water and enough fruits and vegetables to be able to maintain a good balance of vitamins and minerals. So that would basically be, if you can eat vegetables with every single meal, great, and at least 2 pieces of fruit per day. Okay, so I'm going to recap that. Protein with every meal, 3 to 5 meals per day, depending on your activity, size, and appetite. Protein with each meal. Carbohydrates around your training, okay, preferably afterwards. Vegetables with every single meal. Enough fats to feel mentally on point, so nuts, avocado, etc., and to have your energy fairly stable, and at least a couple of pieces of fruit per day. If you can do that, you can get those basics right, almost everyone will see results from those very, very simple changes. Now, of course, depending on how far you want to go, how lean you want to get, what exactly you want to do to your body, we can go more in depth to that, but it takes a little bit more individual attention. It's a bit less simple to just say, here is the generic, this is what everybody should do. But if you follow those rules, almost every single person watching this will get great results pretty quickly. When, how fast? Within 3 to 4 days, if you've eaten right, you've done everything correctly, you will start to feel a difference, i.e. the way your energy is, bloating, general feelings of well-being. Within a week, you should start to see a difference to your body. For some, it will be more noticeable than others. Within 2 weeks, you will definitely see a clear difference in fat loss, providing you are in a mild calorie deficit. Okay, so as long as you're eating between 3 and 5 meals, set up as I've mentioned, if you are not seeing quite clear fat loss by the end of the 2nd week, then you're probably eating 1 extra meal too much. So you reduce that meal and almost certainly that's when you're going to see results. Okay, but as I say, over time, we will go more into this side of things, nutrition side of things. It's a much, much bigger subject. So I hope this has answered a few of your questions in the detail that you want. Now, remember, use the link, ask questions for me to answer. Whatever it is, we will do our best to cover it exactly like I have now, so don't be afraid. And of course, catch me during the sessions if it's something very training related, like the issue a young lady had with her back. We can work around it, and the plans have been programmed with these things in mind. So try to trust in them, and we will make sure you are safe. We will make sure you get results above all. Okay? I will see you very, very soon. Send me more questions. And until then, I will see you in the classes.